In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The story of Walsingham is the story of a building. A very small building, but nevertheless the story of a building. When Our Lady appeared to Richelda, she asked her to build a house in honour of the Annunciation, the Holy House in Nazareth. And that building was destroyed. Not just knocked down, but the very foundations were dug up. And all that's left of that great priory church is the arch that we see. Now, today we celebrate another building, and it's the Lateran Basilica, St. John's Church in Rome. And like our small building, St. John's Lateran was also destroyed through earthquake and all sorts of events, and the church was rebuilt on numerous occasions. So the destruction of buildings happens. And the destruction of the temple, which is linked to this feast day, the destruction and the continual rebuilding of the church, the renewal of the temple in Jerusalem, and here in Walsingham, the renewal, not of a building down there, but of a building here. What links the rebuilding of the temple, the rebuilding of the Lateran Basilica, and the rebuilding of Walsingham? It wasn't the need to have buildings. It was the faith of the people of God. And that faith was at the very heart of it. And in that second reading, he said, "Don't you realize that you were God's temple, and that the Spirit of God was living in you? If anyone should destroy the temple of God, God will destroy him, because the temple of God is sacred, and you are that temple." Therefore, we can look at churches, we can look at religious buildings, and we can say sometimes, isn't it sad that they're not used as they used to be used? You look across the whole of North Norfolk, the largest selection of medieval churches in Europe, so many of them just not used anymore. Now, what does that reflect? What it reflects is the temple of the people who make those buildings come alive. Our faith. If there is no faith among the people, the church, the physical church, becomes a museum. And it becomes a post office. And it becomes a place where it's difficult to find the key because nobody knows where the key is. And it becomes a place where it's only used every now and again. But that's not the temple of the Lord. The temple of the Lord is the faith of the people of God. And sometimes the faith of the people of God, we know, can destroy the temple, or that lack of faith. And that's what the gospel so refers to. That Jesus entered the temple to pray. And when he found what he found there, he threw it out. He entered that temple and he saw the abuses that were taking place. He saw the ignoring of the great holiness of the people that this temple represented. Because it's the holiness of the people in the end that is destroyed when the temple is ignored. And so he goes in and he clears out all the cellars. He clears them all out. And he throws them out. And he's throwing them out of the building. But this story is not just about clearing people out of a building. It must be personal to each one of us. Because if we are the temple of the Lord, if the Lord came to visit you and me, what would he be angry about? What would he want to throw out of your life? What would he want to get rid of? What would he clear out of the temple that is you? Because that's the heart of this story. It is that within this temple, this relationship with Jesus Christ, when we turn our back, when we start doing things that are inappropriate in our own temple, which we call sin, which we call selfishness, those are the things that the Lord would want to throw out, as he threw out the sellers. And he says, zeal for your house will devour me. The sign of how much we are loved by God. And it is in the midst of that love that we can be renewed. And if the dwellers of the temple are renewed, then the temple will be renewed. If the people of the church are true temples and recipients of the Holy Spirit, then the church will be renewed. The renewal of the church is about one thing: the holiness of its members. It is about the ability and the willingness and the courage and the faith of the members of the church to become the temple of God, to embody the reality of Jesus Christ. So when Our Lady asked Rocheldis to build a house, she didn't mean just that the house was the most important. Of course the house was important symbolically, of course, because of what happened there. But what she was asking is to share her joy. And her joy was that Jesus Christ entered the temple that was her womb. Jesus Christ came into her because she had accepted this gift that God said came to her through the message of the Annunciation. So building churches is one thing, but building the temple, which is the Holy Spirit in each one of us, is a personal element of our life that we bring to the temple, which is the building. But if nobody brings the gift of themselves, then the building stands empty. If nobody brings the building of themselves, the temple of themselves, then the church becomes a wreck. And you can't destroy churches, as we've seen in Syria. They've knocked them down, they've destroyed them, as they destroyed here in Walsingham. But because the faith is not about a building, it's about the temple, which is each one of us, that can never be destroyed. It can be weakened. That's why we must remember what the Lord did. He came into the temple and he cleansed the temple. And so we need to let him come into our lives so that he may cleanse the temple of our soul and of our spirit. So today, let us give thanks for the beauty of our buildings. Let us give thanks for what they represent. But let us take even greater thanks that it's not the buildings that in the end that matters. Don't you realize, we are told, that you are God's temple and that the Spirit of God is living in you. And if anyone should destroy the temple of God, God will destroy them, because the temple of God is sacred, and you are that temple. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.